You're listening to Disaster Class Podcast by Instinct Ready Emergency Management. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Disaster Class. And yes, you're seeing correctly. Wesley is not here.
Yeah, I don't quite look like Wesley, do I?
No, you don't look like Wesley. Well, welcome back. We have Jason Martin with us. Jason, you've made an appearance before on the podcast before.
I did, but it was on the other end of the spectrum. I was the guest that time. Now I get the privilege to co-host, and
Yeah,
excited to be here.
we're excited to have you now co-hosting Disaster Class. So this is kind of a fun. This will be your introduction as a co-host on Disaster Class. So it's going to be fun.
And it's going to be the Jason and Jason show.
Yes, the Jason. So this might be, because I can see how this could get confusing, because now we got Jason and Jason. So we might need some nicknames. I don't know.
I've been going by Pappy quite a bit lately with a little 3-year-old, so I like that.
Happy? All right.
Pappy.
If you can rock with it, it's good for me.
I can rock with it. I got the bald head and the gray beard, so I can rock the Pappy.
There you go. Well, welcome Happy as our new co-host. Actually, it's kind of nice. So Wesley is on vacation, so you're filling in for Wesley today, and it's good because then I can get away. I'm rocking my old school Disaster Class shirt. Don't tell Wesley.
My secret, our secret.
I don't have my new sweatshirt with the new logo yet, so he'll.
Well, that makes two of us because I'm waiting for mine as well.
Yeah. Well, today we're talking about leadership. Leadership. So why is it important, right, in thinking about emergency situations? And really, leadership's a broad topic. It's not just, dealing with disasters and emergencies, but really leadership is important all around and wherever you find it. So we're going to be discussing a little bit about why is effective leadership important? How do you become an effective leader? And then what qualities make an effective leader? So to answer these questions, we got to talk to Wesley, and I got to talk with Pete Gaynor, who we actually had on a previous episode. So I just want to interrupt for just a moment to say thank you to Sawyer Products for sponsoring this episode of Disaster Class. I personally love Sawyer Products. I've been using their water filter and insect repellent for years. Every time I go camping, hiking, spend any time outdoors, I've got my Sawyer Products there. I keep a water filter in my go bag. That way, if anything happens, I know it's there when I need it. So whether you're in the backcountry, the backyard, you're on the trail, or doing humanitarian relief, Sawyer products are making an impact. In fact, every Sawyer product you buy is a contribution to their common humanity, bringing clean water programs to people in need domestically, internationally, and through disaster relief missions all around the world. So visit Sawyer.com today to learn more and to find a retailer near you. Hey.
Look who it is.
There he is.
It is good to see you. How you doing?
It's good to see you guys. It's been a little bit.
It's been a bit. So, Mr. Gaynor, you've been busy, huh?
Yeah.
I don't know that he ever stopped being busy, though.
Right.
It's my nature, I think, to be busy.
No, I get that.
And there's danger in not being busy. So I try to be not FEMA busy, but busy enough to keep me out of trouble. So
right.
Nice.
That's what I always say. Just busy enough to stay out of trouble.
Yeah, I hear that.
That's it.
So maybe just to remind our audience of who Pete Gaynor is. So he was FEMA administrator and acting Secretary of Homeland Security during the Trump administration. He was director for both state and local emergency management agencies. And then he also spent 26 years in the Marine Corps. So
yeah, lots of leadership experience. I mean, just thinking about those few areas. Wow.
Yeah. So, and as we mentioned, right, so we talked with Pete a while back. So if you want to go check out that previous episode, we talked to him about, what is FEMA's role in disasters, what's their purpose, and because sometimes the the general public maybe lacks a little bit understanding of what FEMA's role is actually in disaster. So go back and watch that episode if you haven't seen it, where we get to talk with Pete. But we talked with Pete a little bit because he's, as you mentioned, Jason, ton of leadership experience.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to know, well, what helped shape him as a leader?
There's not many natural born leaders. I'm sure there are, right? Maybe Patton or Napoleon or others, right? Churchill, natural born leaders. But for the most part, we, like, the big we make leaders. So I think I'm a made leader. I'm not a natural leader. And the way I learned, I think obviously those things that your parents give you, that you probably don't know that you're getting, right? Because you're smarter than your parents, right?
Of course.
And your children are smarter than you, right? So that's the other gift on the other side. Spent 4 years in the Marine Corps. Got out as a sergeant. I was in the infantry, and then you get out, and I have the GI Bill, and go to school because now you're a little bit smarter, and you realize, oh, I should make some investments in myself through formal education. I did that, and then I realized along the way that I missed the pain and suffering of the Marine Corps. As crazy as that sounds, and then went back in as a commissioned officer, again, smarter, but not that smart, back into the infantry because, that's just what I liked. And then, years later, you come out on the other end.
Wow. Lots of experience.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that he highlighted that there's born leaders, but not all of us are that born leader. So he says he's a made leader.
Right.
And through all of that experience that he has, and I had the privilege of listening to a lecture that Pete gave about leadership several years ago, and his input on it is phenomenal, as we're discussing today. And it's in every aspect of our lives. It's not just emergencies,
right?
But it's everywhere,
right?
In everything that we're doing, we need leaders,
right? Absolutely, and leadership's important, right? And so thinking about the context of disaster class and thinking about responding to emergencies, right? Even if you're not in a formal leadership role, there might be scenarios where you get forced into a situation where you might have to call the shots. So, Jason, maybe you as a family man, thinking about how caring for your family, your kids, right? Or maybe you just stumble upon a situation and there's maybe no one's doing anything, but maybe you've
got to come up with something,
right?
Yeah.
Right. It was interesting because obviously, he talked about the things that we learn as we grow up, like our upbringing, our background experience does a lot to shape who we are and who we become. But even if you didn't have an upbringing that was maybe conducive for some of these things that makes a leader, but that doesn't mean that there's no hope, right?
Yeah, you can learn from the experiences around you.
I have learned a lot from really great leaders, but I'm going to say I probably learned just as much or maybe a little bit more from bad leaders. And so there's value in both sides of that. And those lessons of like what not to do, like how not to lead, are just as important about how the other more positive lessons are about how to lead.
I love one of the things you mentioned. We get that exposure to good leaders and bad leaders, and asking yourself the question, what can I learn from this, right? Not to become the thing you hate. Because sometimes we have that bad boss and we just you complain about it, but using that as a learning experience can be really valuable.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's good to have self-awareness about what you want to be and what you don't want to be. So I think that's important. But I've seen people adopt what I would call like negative practices because I think they can, I think, in the short term yield results, right? Just because whatever the circumstance, it can yield a result. And I think the result is like a false result, but it can yield a positive result. And some people take that, oh, this is a good way to get results, so I'm just going to keep doing that. And I think they lose their way on like what really counts, right? And so, yeah, you can be a bad leader with some bad habits and get results, but I think it's short-lived, right? And I think it's an overall negative for you. So you have to have self-awareness about you and what you want to be.
I really appreciated how he talked about the bad leaders, because we have a tendency to focus, they're a bad leader and you don't want anything to do with them, but you don't gain anything. You're not looking at it in a perspective to gain something from it and to learn, okay, well, I don't want to be like that. So what can I do differently? What would I like to have had done in that situation? And sometimes these leaders will reach out for that feedback to help them become a better leader. Sometimes they don't. So you just have to move forward with it and make those changes yourself so that you can gain the best for it. And every bad situation has some positive that we can gain out of it. And I think that's what Pete was trying to help us see.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a great point. And one of the other things he mentioned that I kind of want to talk a little bit about too is positive results don't necessarily mean equal positive leadership.
Yeah.
Right. So he talked about developing some of those negative practices because they yield positive results. Right? And
doesn't mean it's great leadership.
Right. Exactly. And so there's a difference between being a boss and being a leader.
Yeah.
And, you can be that guy just on the sidelines, just barking orders, or you can be the guy that's setting the example and paving the way forward.
Yeah. In the trenches with the people.
Right. I found this quote, and it's not attributed to anyone. Its credit is unknown, but I thought it was interesting. It said, leaders instill in their people a hope for success and belief in themselves. Positive leaders empower people to accomplish their goals.
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing, right? It's not so much thinking about the results, but it's thinking about the people that are under your leadership, right?
Right. I remember years ago, my boss was, yelling and screaming and getting on everybody, and it just built a fire in you, and not a good fire, because you'd get angry about it and you'd get upset. And me personally, the way I responded to that is I dug in and I got it done. But it was because the rage that was building up inside me just did it. That's not a leader.
Right.
That, he got the results, and probably a lot quicker than he was thinking because of the way I was working. But that's doesn't produce a good leader. You want a good leader will instill their followers to want to get to do it and get involved and give their best out of their desire to succeed.
Right.
And for the whole team to succeed, not as an individual, but as a team.
Yeah. They'll follow you because they want to, not because they have to.
Exactly.
And that's the kind of leadership you want. So Pete talked a little bit about adopting a set of core values and how that helped him.
But I think one of the things that stays with you is like your core values, right? So if you had, like, from your parents, if you had good core values when you were a young kid, the Marine Corps or the military, helped shape that a little bit more. And then obviously into the political world, where some people have core values and some people have values different than you, right? That don't line up. But I think the thing that has become most valuable to me is that you have a set of core values that are the foundation for everything that you do, right? So I could probably chart through my entire career, how core values kept me on the straight and narrow, and hopefully a more positive and focused leader.
I really appreciated that with core values, because people may not agree with your values.
Right.
But if you stick to your values and you're not vacillating back and forth, but you're holding to your guns, if they're good values, people are going to respect you.
And so I think the first one, and probably the most important one, is integrity, right? so that you conduct business with integrity, with fairness, with some level of transparency, and you're doing it for the right reasons. You're not doing it for you, right? You're not doing it for your family. You're not doing it for something else. You're doing it for the agency. You're doing it for disaster survivors, and you're doing it for the nation. So you have to have integrity. And along with that, right, and this applies to every level of government. So whether you were started at the local or work in a local, or you work for the president, you have to be able to speak the truth to the boss. And your responsibility, especially as a political appointee, you have a responsibility, obviously, to the agency that you lead, but also to the boss that hired you, right? To make sure you give him or her good guidance about what's going to happen, why we want to do it, why is it good for you, why is it good for the jurisdiction, whether it's the local, state, or federal. But it all is based on having a high degree of integrity, and if you don't have that as a core value, I'm not sure how you can operate.
It's so important to have integrity, especially in if you're an emergency manager, or in a disaster situation, right? Because so many people, it can go south pretty quick, and so being able to be true to yourself and maintaining that integrity is huge.
Yeah. One of the definitions of integrity is honest, ethical, and follow defined moral principles. And if you don't have those, and they all have to be combined, and if you don't have one or all of those, you're not going to gain the respect of anybody around you. So nobody's going to want to follow you.
Right. Absolutely. So, maybe just kind of an off the cuff question here, Jason, but so Pete mentioned how integrity is kind of one of the ones that really he lives by. What other core values do you feel are important for leadership?
If you're not honest, your respect just goes down the drain, because nobody's going to believe what you say. The direction you give them, they're going to question it.
We baby the public way too much. We need to be much more honest with the public than I think we historically have been. Right? Tell them the gosh honest truth about what's happening, and set expectations that go along with that.
Right.
People appreciate that.
In one of the previous episode, not that long ago, we were talking about having community engagement, and getting at stakeholder buy-in. So from an emergency management perspective, trying to get the public to be able to buy in, to adopt some of those preparedness mindsets and behaviors that we're trying to get the public to do. But if the public feels like you're withholding information from them, well, then that trust level goes down.
It diminishes. It makes me think of, and this is going back a little ways in disaster class, but 5 days at Memorial.
Right.
From the highest level of the management at the hospital, all the way down. And they weren't honest with one another. They weren't honest with the patients, just within the building itself. And then the outside forces weren't honest with everybody else as far as what was going on and what was going to happen. And so it just, everything fell apart. And I think that's just a huge example of why honesty is so important. Pete said, set expectations.
Right.
And that's what you can do, and people know what's going on when you're honest with them.
Right. People have personal agendas, they have, political agendas. And again, I think in public safety, the only agenda you can have is the agenda of fairness and compassion and respect and integrity. If you don't have those things, then I'm not sure how you operate in the public safety space.
And in emergency management, right, in public safety, right, we have that mission of just trying to help people. How do you find navigating around some of those different things?
Well, I mean, it's in a lot of this, it's overlapping, right? It's not completely, 100% aligned with how you want to, but I think for the most part, there's overlapping commonality to agendas, right? And part of this is, first of all, you're not going to win all the time.
Right.
You have to realize that. So, coming out of the Marine Corps into coming into local government, you know, I had a really unrealistic goal when I first started. Was like, I'm gonna like make good decisions that 100% of the population loves.
Oh, to be young, right?
And that lasted like a week, right? Then I realized, well, that's a stupid thing to do. And so I lowered my standards a little bit, and so maybe I can just get 51% to like what I'm gonna do, and maybe even that sometimes is too high. You know, maybe just 40% would be good enough. So I think you have to realize that you're not going to please everyone, right? It's virtually impossible. If you were handing out $100 bills, right, on the street, you would think people would generally be happy, right? So if I had a stack of $100 bills in my hand and I came across you on the street and said, "Here's a $100 bill," and for nothing, and the guy saw that I had a stack of hundreds in the other hand, some people will say, "Well, can I get more?"
Yep.
Right.
Why only give me 100?
There, right? So it's like, no, you can't satisfy everyone. But you can find commonality, right? And the thing that, and you know, what appeals to whatever the problem you're trying to solve or whatever you're trying to sell, you can find that. And it takes a little work to do it, and it takes like people to people work to do it, right?
Right.
You got to have to get out there and talk to the people, and in some cases, people get it, what you're trying to sell or do. Other cases, people don't get it. And that's okay too. But even if they don't get it, if it's the right thing to do, even though you may not have a majority, you got to do it. But if it's the right thing to do and you're doing it for the right reason, then you have to do it. So again, you can find commonality. I think most people are reasonable for the most part, but it does take work, right? You got to get out there and you got to get in front of people. You got to shake hands. You got to explain it to them.
One of the things that he mentioned, I think it's super important, right, is he said finding commonality or common ground.
Yep.
Being able to, and I think a lot of that comes down to, well, just, sometimes we're so wrapped up in we have kind of tunnel vision in what we're trying to do that we sometimes fail to try to understand the other perspective.
Yep.
And I think that's trying to just understand the different perspectives, and then, well, is there kind of a place in the middle where we can meet? Is there a common that we can kind of agree on?
And that's the biggest goal, is to get through the disaster, get through the emergency, and provide the biggest amount of help, the best help you can, for those who are suffering, the victims of this.
So here you are, you've got all of this experience. Sometimes it's success, sometimes it's opportunity. You've worked all of these
sometimes
things
it's failure,
and now you are creating a masterclass.
Yeah.
So with this masterclass, this transfer of knowledge and experience that you have amassed, what are some key leadership lessons that you hope to impart to your students? Like, I'm gonna take this class, what am I gonna walk away with?
Yeah. So it took me a while to get to the class, right? Because I had to think about, you have to kind of relive it a little bit, and then what's important, what's not important.
Distill it. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good word. Thank you, Wesley. It's a good word. Distill it, and then okay, now that I've distilled it, how can I create value out of it? How do you help your fellow emergency managers, your fellow public safety leaders, other aspiring leaders, to kind of share some of the things that I learned, endured, tripped over, got smashed in the face with, right? All those, all of the above. How do I share that to make us stronger, right? To make us stronger. It started out as it was an in-person class. I wanted to do small groups. And individuals ask me, well, how can I take it if I can't get into a group? And then I'm like, oh, well, maybe I should produce this thing in an online version that an individual can take. I go through the 12 things that I think you have to really know to be and I say to be successful, and I don't want I don't want that to sound like 100% successful, because it's never 100%.
Right.
But to give you like the edge to be more
Mhm.
successful, here are like the 12 things that I want to share with my fellow emergency managers, my fellow public safety officials, corporate America, colleges and universities. I've done this all over. So how do I share that to make people smarter for the next time this thing happens? So that's essentially why I did the course, and you can get it online. So we're gonna do a shameless plug here.
Please go with the shameless plug.
So,
Please do.
So the shameless plug is I have a website, and the website is and this was my nickname in the White House. So I didn't create this, but I'm
Stuck with it.
I'm leveraging it.
Embracing it.
FEMA Pete. FEMAPete.com. So the White House people would say, get FEMA Pete here.
Okay.
Right.
So FEMA Pete. So that's where it came from. Yep. I did not create it. I just shamelessly use it as my website.
Yeah.
So you can go to FEMAPete.com and you can get a lot of stuff there. You can find the classes, both in person and online.
Mm-hmm.
The books that I'm reading, all the articles that I've written are posted. You can get those for free.
Yep.
And then other stuff you can use as a resource. So there's a lot there, but that's where I am. That's where you can find me.
So really cool. I haven't taken Pete's class yet, but I would definitely love to do it and to be able to tap in some of that knowledge and experience. And I've also been able to listen to a couple a seminar that he's been able to do, and he's got some interesting stories.
He does. And just by going on the website, there's a pop-up up there, and you can download 7 mistakes by emergency management leaders during a crisis. Free to download. All you got to do is put in your email address to get it. I mean, what better way to learn than from a man who's got all those years of experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this was fun, Pappy. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and it won't be the last. We're going to be seeing you a lot more on Disaster Class and hosting some of your own things that you're doing. So we're excited to see what you've got in the works too.
We've got a lot in store, so stay tuned.
Yeah, awesome. But as always, there is homework. So make sure you like, subscribe, leave us that 5-star rating. Right, please give us leave us a comment on our YouTube or a review in our Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen. It seems like a small thing, but it makes a big difference for us. So please make sure you do that, and it really helps us out to keep this content coming to you. So thank you as always for listening in. Let's see if we can do this, Pappy. Stay educated.
Stay prepared.
Stay equipped.
Class dismissed.
This episode of Disaster Class is hosted by Jason Perez, Wesley Long, and Jason Martin, with a special appearance by Pete Gaynor. Episode written, directed, and produced by Jason Perez. Executive producers are Jason Perez and Wesley Long. Disaster Class is owned and produced by Instinct Radio Incorporated. Copyright 2024, all rights reserved.